It was supposed to be a quiet weekend, a much-needed escape from the city's chaos. But as night fell and the forest thickened around him, the silence of the woods became unnerving, pierced by the distant sound of something whispering. Alex, a 30-year-old graphic designer, had been looking forward to this camping trip for months. After the relentless pace of his job and the constant bombardment of city life, he craved solitude and the simplicity of nature. He chose a remote spot deep in the Pine Ridge National Forest, far from any marked trails, where he could truly disconnect and find peace. The drive up was uneventful, and by the time he arrived, the sun was beginning its descent. He set up his tent near a small clearing, the forest around him alive with the sounds of chirping birds and rustling leaves. The air was fresh, carrying the scent of pine and earth. It was everything Alex had hoped for. As evening approached, he started a small fire, preparing a simple meal. The warmth of the flames and the crackling of the wood put him at ease. He sat back in his camp chair, watching the stars emerge one by one in the clear night sky. It was serene, the perfect antidote to the stress he'd been feeling. But as the fire began to die down, and the forest around him grew darker, an unsettling feeling crept in. The comforting sounds of the day were replaced by a deep, eerie silence, broken only by the occasional rustle of leaves. The sense of peace Alex had felt earlier started to fade, replaced by an inexplicable tension. Trying to shake off the unease, Alex decided to call it a night. He extinguished the fire, crawled into his tent, and zipped it shut. Wrapped in his sleeping bag, he tried to relax, but sleep wouldn't come. His mind raced with thoughts of the day, of work, and then, the quiet. The silence outside his tent seemed to press in on him, suffocating. Just as he began to drift off, he heard it, a faint whisper, distant but distinct. It was almost as if someone was speaking just outside his tent, though the words were impossible to make out. Alex's eyes shot open, his heart pounding. He held his breath, listening. The whispering continued, growing louder, though still too soft to understand. It was strange, deliberate, and undeniably human. He sat up slowly, trying to stay quiet. Could someone have followed him out here? He hadn't seen another soul since he left the main road. Grabbing his flashlight, he unzipped the tent just enough to peek outside. The beam of light cut through the darkness, illuminating the trees and the remnants of his campfire. Nothing. The forest was still, as if frozen in time. "Hello?" Alex called out, his voice shaking slightly. "Is someone there?" Silence. Then, just as he began to relax, the whispering resumed, louder this time, coming from somewhere deeper in the woods. It seemed to circle him, as if whatever, or whoever it was moving around the campsite. A chill ran down Alex's spine. He knew he should leave, but something kept him rooted in place. He stepped out of the tent, sweeping the flashlight around the perimeter, but there was nothing. No movement, no sign of life. The whispering stopped again, replaced by an eerie silence. Alex's heart raced as he tried to rationalize what was happening. Maybe it was just the wind, he thought, though he knew that wasn't true. The whispers were too clear, too distinct. He decided to check the surrounding area, hoping to find some logical explanation. He moved cautiously, the flashlight guiding his steps as he ventured into the woods. The trees loomed overhead, their branches casting twisted shadows on the ground. Suddenly, he heard it again, closer than before. The whispering seemed to be coming from all directions, surrounding him. Panic set in, and Alex turned to head back to his tent, but something stopped him in his tracks. A figure, barely visible in the darkness, standing just beyond the reach of his flashlight. "Who's there?" Alex shouted, his voice cracking with fear. The figure didn't move, didn't respond. It just stood there, watching him. Alex's heart pounded in his chest as he slowly backed away, the beam of his flashlight trembling in his hand. The figure remained still, its presence oppressive, almost as if it were a part of the forest itself. Then, without warning, the whispering started again, louder, more insistent. The figure moved, stepping toward him, its form shifting in the darkness. Alex turned and ran, adrenaline pumping through his veins, the whispering growing louder with every step. He stumbled through the woods, branches scratching his face and arms, his breath coming in ragged gasps. The whispers followed him, relentless, as if they were inside his mind, urging him deeper into the forest. After what felt like an eternity, Alex burst into a small clearing, the moonlight offering a brief reprieve from the suffocating darkness. He collapsed to the ground, gasping for air, but the relief was short-lived. The whispering stopped abruptly, leaving a deafening silence in its wake. Alex looked around frantically, trying to catch his breath. He had no idea where he was, lost in the dense woods, far from the safety of his campsite. Then, from the edge of the clearing, the figure appeared again. It was closer now, its features still obscured by the shadows. But there was something wrong about it, something that made Alex's blood run cold. The way it moved, the way it seemed to blend with the darkness. It wasn't human. Desperate, Alex scrambled to his feet and backed away, his flashlight flickering. The figure advanced, its movements slow and deliberate. It was as if the darkness itself was coming for him. "Please," Alex whispered, his voice trembling. "I don't want any trouble." But the figure didn't stop. It kept coming, the whispering returning, louder and more menacing. The words were still unintelligible, but the intent was clear. This was no ordinary encounter. In a final act of desperation, Alex turned and ran, sprinting blindly through the forest. He didn't know where he was going. He just knew he had to get away. But the whispering followed, echoing in his ears, growing louder with every step. As he ran, the forest seemed to close in around him, the trees twisting and warping, as if the very landscape was conspiring against him. His flashlight died, plunging him into darkness. He stumbled and fell, the cold earth meeting him with unforgiving force. Lying there, exhausted and terrified, Alex could feel the presence closing in. The whispers were deafening now, filling his mind, driving him to the brink of madness. And then, just as suddenly as it had started, the whispering stopped. Silence. Alex lay there, too terrified to move, his heart pounding in his chest. He felt the figure standing over him, its malevolent presence palpable. The last thing Alex saw before the darkness consumed him was the twisted smile of the figure, its eyes glowing with a malevolent hunger. The forest had claimed him, his screams lost in the endless whispering that would continue to haunt those woods, a warning to any who dared to enter.